let's start off with kind of obvious question of how you kind of became interested in psychedelics and you came to be kind of talking about them in public.
Yeah, it's kind of like a kind of a long story, and I'll try and condense it as much as possible. But I mean, I first got into psychedelics very early, in my sort of like late teens, and it was just part of the sort of the scene in Manchester, England, and it was taken sort of recreation. I didn't see much beyond that. But then it was, I started getting into them much more in my 30s, sort of like mid 30s, as a kind of a way of trying to resolve some problems I was having with anxiety, like very severe anxiety that was kind of stopping me from leaving the house. And so, yeah, that kind of, did the usual thing of scouring the internet to find, ways to try and resolve these issues, and that kind of led me to discovering sort of DMT, which then led me to sort of ayahuasca, which then led me down this kind of path of going on sort of shamanic retreats and just really investigating all different aspects of this psychedelic culture. And I guess with what I'm doing on the channel, on my channel, is really just it just changes from month to month, to be honest. It's got this central core of psychedelics, but it started off as I started the channel to kind of review different retreat centers, and then that kind of grew into sort of talking a little bit about the experiences of these different substances, and then that talked a bit into kind of more of a kind of social commentary on the psychedelics subculture in general. So and then I've kind of more recently kind of tried to branch out a bit more into kind of more creative filmmaking within, again, around this kind of psychedelic scope. So I'm really just feeling it out as I go along, but it's this core. I guess if I was going to describe what it is I do, it's how I think it is the journey of like a relatively ordinary person, just going through this psychedelic culture and just using it as a kind of a way of bit of creative expression and sort of working through ideas in my head. I use the channel as a way to kind of think out loud. And sort of process things as I'm going. So it's really kind of a kind of video notepad for just my experience really for the last couple of years.
Right. And so with, did you say you first tried DMT and then ayahuasca? Is that the sequence?
Yeah. So it was vaporized DMT was a kind of, was that transition point between the sort of the recreational things I'd done in my youth, and then realizing, oh, wow, there's actually something else going on here beyond this kind of recreational use, which I had no idea was there, because that DMT experience is just so stronger and so much more vivid than the sort of, things that were happening sort of just out around in Manchester. That, yeah, it was this very typical sort of story you hear of someone just having their eyes completely open, like, oh, wow, I never knew this was here. And that was, and because it was such a powerful experience, that's what made me want to explore it more in something that would give you more sort of time within that space, which is kind of what led me to ayahuasca. But I think even though I move through different cycles with these things, I think they're all kind of like very valuable tools in the box, and I move between them all, going backwards and forwards. So I'm having a bit of a sort of DMT renaissance at the moment after going through a period where I didn't touch it for a couple of years, because it was I just went through a phase where I kind of preferred the slower, if more slightly torturous phase of ayahuasca. And so now, yeah, I'm kind of, I don't know, it's just DMT's kind of come back into my peripheral vision at the moment.